Hello there, welcome to Genesis Models. My name is Bobby Waldron and welcome to episode 27 of the Leopard 2 build. Now in this episode we're doing lots of little sort of bits here and there. Mainly we're sort of messing about with techniques where we have things like wet effects. Right, you could probably maybe just see some nice little streaky wet effects. We've even got things like a bit of oil stains as well, which is another effect that we kind of mess about with, as well as we've even got some like fuel stain effects as well to sort of show you in this episode. So a nice couple of techniques, so let's get down and show you how to do it. So we've got a lot of nice little techniques in this video to do. So we'll just start off with some nice wet effects. There's lots of wet effects out there. I'm going to be going with Meng's Wet Effects 2015. I do find this one's a little bit on the thick side, which is kind of good because we can thin it down to what we want, and it's good to sometimes have it that little bit thick for certain situations with wet effects. Now you are supposed to thin this down with white spirits, but I just don't seem to have any, so I am using, wherever it has gone, it was just here, right in front of me. I'm going to be using some distilled turpentine. You know, it does work, I have tested it. It's by Winsor and Newton, really good sort of manufacturer, really good quality sort of art products, and it does the job just as fine. But sort of white spirits of ammo, AK, don't really matter, just so as you can thin it down. Right, so you've got to give this a good shake as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with having it thin, and then we'll go neat from the pot as we sort of move along. Now what we want to do is just add a little bit more flavor to this model. It's looking good already, nice and lightly weathered, as you can see, nothing major or massive. All right, so we're just going to get a nice bit of this. Right, and we're going to mix it maybe about 60–70% wet effects to our turpentine. Just clean my paintbrush off. And what this will do is it'll thin it to a sort of a nice consistency that will give it a bit of flow, right? Because our wet effects is quite thick, it's not going to flow. It's just going to, wherever you paint it is where it's going to go, and that's where it's going to stay. But with a nice bit of white spirits or turpentine, thinning it down, right, it's going to give it a bit of flow. So you want to get it to kind of like almost like a watery consistency, really, to get it to have a bit of flow. So I've added a nice bit just in there, and what we're going to do, we're going to keep this light, but maybe if we sort of start off with the back just here, where it's probably have got really muddy, as you can see, and probably get a bit wet. Maybe we can just start just here, and we'll just paint on, you know, where it's going to be, and then we can just bring that down, right, like so. Nice little point, being sort of careful, and we get ourselves like a nice sort of running down bit of water, which is kind of built up and started draining down. We can kind of maybe do a little one that doesn't quite go down. And the thing is with this is, because we've thinned it, what's going to happen is it looks pretty sort of wet, looks kind of sort of shiny, as you can see, but because we thinned it down, when it dries it's not going to be so intense as it is. This is where not thinning down this wet effects, leaving it thick as it is, and we can do like a sharper point maybe in the middle of, say, this, and it'll just make the middle bit of this sort of wet streak look really sort of kind of glossy and wet, and around the outside of it, it's gonna, when this dries, it'll look sort of kind of damp, right? And it just gives you it just builds it up quite nicely. We've got all sorts of areas we can do. I mean, I'm going to keep it light on this one, but we've even got the wheels as well, right? For this kind of stuff, it's good to sort of maybe, again, you know, we start at a point, right, and then we sort of streak it down, but not just kind of like streak down, but also sort of kind of make it sort of flow around the edges, and then come down to the next level, flow it around, and then what we can do is just sort of maybe go off a point again and sort of get it to sort of come to the outer edges, right? And we can go as far as we want. We can sort of get that. I'll show you a bit better on camera. You can sort of see how that's give that a sort of really nice wet effect, and it's kind of worked its way down and it's coming to that little bit of a point. You could send that point all the way to the edge, and then you could sort of bring it around the rim. It's totally up to you. I'm going to keep it sort of light. I might do one or two more just here and there. It doesn't hurt to I don't know, maybe sort of on these little side skirts here we could sort of again maybe go from this bolt, and we can just bring it right down, maybe a little one as well, like so. Again, that will dry to be a lot more less sort of wet and looking wet. You'll see in a bit. If I just cut away, let it dry, and you'll see. So that's had a bit of time to dry, and you know, it's just already sort of looking that little bit less sort of shiny and in your face. So this is where we can go off and get the pot and just dip right into it, sort of nice and thick. Now this is going to be a bit more of a sharper way of doing it. It's not going to have that much flow, and when it does dry it is going to look pretty sort of wet. So with this, we're getting out a smaller paintbrush this time. I mean, last time I was using a number 1, now I'm using, what is this, a 00, and we can just dip straight from the pot with this one. And this is where you got to be a bit careful, because what we want to do, right, is just really sort of just target the middle of this streak. Get a bit more on the end of my paintbrush. Right, so just targeting the middle just here, and even not really sort of, hold on, my paintbrush ain't kind of working nicely at the moment, but try and sort of not go all the way down, just sort of target that middle and just go maybe partly the way down. Right, so hopefully what you could see there is I've just kind of only gone in the middle, I've gone just partly the way down, so it gives us sort of like a different sort of layer of kind of like what looks damp mostly, but then a bit sharper in the middle, looks wet, and gives us that bit of a better effect. We can also run around and sort of do tracks as well. Hopefully I've got a bit of my mixture left. Right, and we can sort of take that. No, that's kind of dried up, so let's just quickly make another one, again with the distilled turpentine. And what this will do is we can, if we kind of make maybe on the tracks a little bit thinner, I mean, this is the thing, I mean, depending on how much you thin it, the more flow you get, the more it sort of looks damp, the less you thin it, the more it sort of stays in one place and the more wet it will look. Right, so taking our tracks here, I'll kind of thin this one a little bit more. This should flow that little bit more. I can just sort of like touch this maybe in the bit of the tracks, and it'll flow a little bit more in there, and it'll give it that bit more of a sort of damper looking, not so in your face sort of look to it. Right, and lots of little things like that. The next one is going to be to do some, let's get the right lids on the pots, let's do some oil effects. Right, I'm going to be using a bit of fresh engine oil here, which is 1408, and this is by Ammo as well. As you can see, over time these lids get really sort of gunky and really sticky, and they do get a bit hard to open. Probably a good idea to clean your lids off when you get a new, when I get a new pot, I'll be cleaning the lids off so we don't have that problem. With this one we can go straight from the pot, right, and it's basically sort of applied in the same way. And what we're going to do is sort of, you know, represent some sort of a sealant has broken or something, and it's, you know, we're having a bit of some sort of oil or something
starting to come out of this hub just here. And again, I'm applying it in the same sort of way as the wet effects. You know, we've got a point where it's starting from, and it's coming down, and it's sort of going a little bit here and there, and then it's sort of maybe streaking down, and maybe sort of we'll get that to go around a little bit around the edges here and there, and get it sort of flowing that way. Alright. Now the cool thing about these techniques is, you know, using a bit of the thinners, we can sort of clean up any sort of areas and get it just the way we want. I'm kind of want to get that a bit more sort of oily there, maybe a little bit more on the top, just going around it. And we'll probably have sort of like a point now, so I'm going to try and keep you on camera and get a bit of a point going on where it comes down, like so. There we go. And I might just have it sort of pool up a little bit here. Right, but this is going to need a bit of thinners as well, right? Because that doesn't look quite so nice. I want to sort of stub this down and feather it in. Right. So again, we're going to get out good old bit of thinners. Again, you're going to be using distilled turpentine by Winsor & Newton. Again, you can use the AK stuff if you so wish. It's just I've only got this at hand, so I'm going to just clean my paintbrush off a little bit first, get it sort of clean, right? Because we're going to be stubbing this down. Right, so let's try and get you on camera. That gets that quite nice. And what we're going to do with this is just try and just around the edges, just sort of dab a bit at it. And as you can hopefully see, what that does is pure turpentine now just really sort of like thins that down and spreads it out, feathers it in, and sort of stubs it down. We can now just sort of let that dry, and if it needs a bit more stubbing down or even add in a little bit more fresh engine oil, we can just kind of get it the way you want it. Again, just remember with these kind of things, when they go down wet, they can look a little bit too sort of shiny and in your face. So yeah, I mean, you know, allow it to dry first so that you can see what the end result's going to be. I mean, there's been spots in here where I've been doing all sorts of like wet effects and they look shiny when they go down, but then you give them a bit of time to dry and they just look damp. So just remember to sort of let things dry like so. Next thing we're going to do, I mean, these are modern tanks. I don't like to really put like drips of oil on top of it and loads of spilt fuel and everything. Those are kind of good for World War II. Modern tanks are normally more well looked after, but I'll just do a bit just to show you. Right, now we're going to move into some fuel stains. This is 1409, again by Meng. Right, give them a good shake. The lid, oh no, actually come off quite nicely. Normally they get a bit stuck. Right, and what we're going to do, we want to thin this down because we want to sort of get sort of like fuel stain sort of rings appear. Right, so again, getting out our distilled turpentine, using the same products here. We want to get quite a bit, we want to get this thinned down. It's normally around about maybe, say about 40% paint to thinners, right, sort of like a really sort of nice thin sort of consistency. And what we can do, alright, if we just maybe prop this up, alright, I'll just do it here so it'll be covered up at least by the turret, just to sort of show you this as an example. And what we can do is sort of just make a nice sort of little blob just there like so, and we can sort of have a couple of little blobs here and there. Right, and maybe we could just leave it at that. Now because it's so thin, it's looking quite intense and in your face, but when that dries,
it'll be quite sort of nice and light. So we'll just leave that to just nicely dry. Right, the next thing you want to do is take your distilled turpentine and make up a mixture of, say, maybe about 50-50 of the fuel stain and the turpentine, and this will make it more thicker, so it will give it a bit more of a stronger look. But what we want to do is sort of, you know, basically probably inside where we've already done a bit of our fuel stain effect, right, we can put some blobs just inside there, right, and we could probably do with getting out a smaller paintbrush now, just to sort of get some nice little dots inside of our already little circles of engine oil, and it just sort of gives us a bit of a ringed effect, just kind of all over. And then we could probably dot in some fresh new ones, a little bit smaller, a little bit of dots of, you know, engine oil kind of here and there. And then we need to then again let that dry also. And then finally what we can do is actually go neat with the fuel stains. Right, so we can just nicely just maybe sort of dot in a little sort of blob here and there, just to kind of give, say, middle bits a little bit sort of more of a stain to it, so it's kind of like this progressive rings sort of thing, just kind of getting sort of lighter and more feathered as it sort of goes out. Now with this, you've kind of got sort of two choices, right? You know, you can sort of represent sort of fresh engine oil by plain and simply leaving it as it is. I've done another little example just here, right, and that's kind of looking kind of shiny. I mean, it is a bit of a problem doing this on camera, because you really do get sort of like a shine come through on the camera. As you can see there, it looks like really weird, but Mark 1 eyeball, it just looks like some nice wet fresh engine oil. Right, but what you could also do is we can get out some matte varnish and we could spray that on top, and what you'll sort of end up with is something that has you know, all the shine's gone out of it, so it looks not so fresh. It looks like it's been there for a while, and it's not damp or wet or anything anymore, and it just kind of looks like it's got a bit sort of dustier and sort of got mattified, and you can go down that route. So it's a choice up to you. You kind of leave it as it is, make it look sort of new and fresh, put a matte coat on top of it and make it look a little bit sort of like it's been there for a while. But there's just some sort of nice little fuel stains just there. So just a quick one, I just did do a quick matte coat just on here, and you can hopefully just see like it's a sort of a dulled out stain compared to our glossy stain of fuel. So that is basically it for episode 27. Up in episode 28, I think we're getting close to it potentially being the last episode. Very few things left to do. Literally, I was going to do some kind of like last minute sort of silver chipping sort of effects. We've got to remove the masking tape, last little touches here and there. We've got the MG to sort of finish off. Probably I think actually with the MG we're going to sort of show you some washes with that as well, and hopefully that will sort of finish this build for the next episode in episode 28. So hopefully you've enjoyed that, and hopefully I will see you in our next episode.